The voicemail my father left on a Tuesday afternoon in June started with 7 words that were supposed to control the rest of my life. Show up, or the money stops today. He thought he was holding a leash. He did not know the collar had been off my neck for almost 2 years. I am Sutton Marsh, 31 years old, and until that afternoon I had been playing the longest game of my life inside a family that never once asked me what I actually wanted. I was standing in the corner office on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in downtown Seattle when the message came through. Staring out at Elliott Bay, while my assistant knocked softly on the door with a folder of contracts I needed to sign before the end of business. My father, Redmond Marsh, 64, a regional insurance manager who believed his opinions were laws, was leaving me a warning from a landline in Ohio, while I was closing a deal worth almost $2 million for a firm that had recruited me before I even walked across a stage. He did not know that, none of them did. My little sister Britta, 27, was getting married in 9 days to a man named Corbin Vale, and the entire summer had become a war zone of seating charts, bridesmaid fittings, and increasingly hostile text messages from my mother about my attitude. I had said yes to the wedding 6 months ago. I had said yes to being a bridesmaid. I had said yes to paying for my own dress, my own flight, my own hotel, and a share of the bachelorette weekend in Nashville that I did not attend because I had a client dinner I could not move. That was the sin that started the current storm. Missing a karaoke bar in Tennessee had, according to my mother, broken your sister's heart in a way that may never heal. I listened to my father's voicemail twice, then set the phone face down on my desk. "Sutton, I know you think you are grown," his recording growled, "but let me remind you who has paid for your education, your apartment, your safety net. You will be at that rehearsal dinner. You will smile. You will apologize to your sister. And if you decide to embarrass this family one more time, every dollar we have ever spent on your college is coming back out of your account, one way or another. Do not test me." Here is the part that made me laugh so hard I had to close my office door. My parents had not paid a single cent of my education since the fall of my sophomore year. Not one. They believed they had because I had never corrected them. For 9 years, I had let them keep the story that fit their pride, because the truth would have cost me more than the tuition ever did. I graduated in May of 2022 from a top-ranked business program on the East Coast, and I graduated #1 in my class. Valedictorian. Summa cum laude. A GPA that my professors literally framed a copy of before I walked. I had a job offer in my inbox 11 months before graduation, from a strategy consulting firm that flew me out to their headquarters on a Thursday, put me up at a hotel with a rooftop pool, and offered me a starting salary that was more than what my father and mother earned in a year combined. I accepted on the plane home. I never told my parents. I told them I was still looking, still figuring things out, still their struggling oldest daughter who was lucky to have their support. Because the moment I told them the truth, the shape of our family would change. And I was not ready for that fight until I was ready to win it. My assistant, a woman named Priya who had become one of my closest friends, opened the door a crack and lifted an eyebrow. "You have that face," she noticed. "My father just threatened to take back money he never actually gave me," I explained. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "So this is the wedding week. This is the wedding week." She sat down across from me. Priya had heard pieces of my family over the last 2 years, in the way you tell someone bits of a long story on late nights when a project runs past midnight. She knew Britta was the golden child. She knew my mother, Marlene, 59, ran the house like a small kingdom where Britta was the queen and I was the servant girl who was allowed to sit at the table if she behaved. She knew my father believed daughters existed to bring credit to a father's name, and that the credit was always uneven between the two of us. "So what are you going to do?" Priya asked. I picked up the phone, played the voicemail on speaker, and let her hear the whole thing. When my father's voice threatened to freeze my accounts and cancel my future, Priya's mouth actually opened. "He thinks he has that power," she wondered aloud. "He has believed that for 9 years," I answered, "and I let him." I had let him because when I was 18 and my acceptance letter came in the mail, my mother had cried in a way that I later understood was not joy. She had been proud in front of the neighbors and terrified in private. Britta was 14 at the time, and I heard my mother tell my father in the kitchen that they had to be careful, that Sutton was already too much. That if I got a big fancy degree I would look down on the family, on Britta, on the town. I heard her say those exact words. I was standing in the hallway in my sock feet, holding the letter to my chest. So I made a choice. I would go, I would work, I would climb, and I would let them keep their version of me for as long as they needed it. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I took a night job in the campus library and a weekend job at a coffee shop off Main Street. By the second semester of my sophomore year, I had a research position that paid my tuition in full, and I still let my parents send me a check for $600 a month that they called school money. I put every dollar of it in a savings account under my name and did not touch it. When I graduated, that account had almost $42,000 in it. I mailed my mother a card that year that said thank you, and I meant it, because I had let her feel like the mother she wanted to be. My father's voicemail had just detonated all of that. Priya read my face. "You are going to tell them." "I am going to a wedding," I answered. "And somewhere between the rehearsal and the reception, my father is going to learn that the leash he has been yanking has not been attached to anything for a very long time." "Sutton," she leaned forward, "be careful. Family things get ugly." "They are already ugly," I reminded her. "The only thing that changes on Saturday is that I stop pretending they are not." I opened my laptop. Priya slid the contracts across the desk, and I signed each one in slow, careful letters. My name on those pages was the name that paid my rent, funded my retirement account, bought the small house I closed on in April with cash from savings I had built over 3 years of aggressive investing. My name on those pages was worth more than every threat my father had ever made. Before Priya left, she paused at the door. "For what it is worth," she offered gently, "I hope your sister sees who you really are before the day is over." I thought about Britta. Britta with her laugh that used to make me laugh even when I was angry. Britta at 7, curling up in my lap during thunderstorms. Britta at 12, telling everyone at her birthday party that her big sister was the smartest person she knew. Somewhere along the way, the mother we shared had turned that adoration into resentment, feeding my sister a slow drip of stories about how Sutton thought she was better. Sutton did not care. Sutton was selfish. I had watched it happen, and I had not fought hard enough because I had been too busy building the life I would eventually walk back into that family holding. "Me too," I answered quietly, "but I am not counting on it." I closed the laptop. Outside my window, the sun was starting to slide toward the water, painting the bay a shade of gold I had not seen in Ohio in years. Somewhere in a small blue house in a small quiet town, my father was probably telling my mother that he had handled Sutton. My mother was probably nodding along, already planning what she would say to me at the rehearsal dinner about respect. They had 9 days. 9 days to keep believing they held my future in their hands. On the 10th day, I would be standing on the grass at a country club outside Cincinnati in a lavender dress they picked for me, and everything they thought they knew about their oldest daughter would come apart in front of 200 guests. I picked up my phone and typed a single text to my father, 3 words, "I will come." Then I turned the phone face down again, closed my office door, and got back to work. The plane touched down at Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport at 4:17 in the afternoon on Thursday, and by 4:52 I was inside a rental car heading north on I-75 with my garment bag laid across the back seat and my phone already lighting up with messages from my mother. "Where are you? Are you close? Britta is asking. Do not be late. Your father is not in the mood." I had not been in the mood for 29 years, I thought, but I did not say that out loud. I set the phone in the cup holder and let the messages stack up unread. The town I grew up in sits about 40 minutes outside the city, a place called Linden Ridge, population 11,000, 1 grocery store, 2 stoplights, and a high school football field that still holds more of my father's pride than either of his daughters ever have. Driving in through the old part of town, past the water tower and the flower shop where I worked one summer in high school, I felt something in my chest that surprised me. Not homesickness exactly. More like recognizing a stranger who used to be you. My hotel was 1 exit past the family house. I had booked it 2 months ago. My mother had cried on the phone about that too, told me it was disrespectful, told me, Britta wanted her sister under the same roof for the last week of her single life. I had let her cry and then quietly kept the reservation. I knew what would happen if I stayed at my parents' house. My mother would use every hour to remind me of every failure she had assigned to me. My father would find a reason to bring up the money. Britta would drift in and out of my room with tears and last-minute questions, and mood swings the size of continents. I would arrive at the wedding hollowed out, which was exactly what they were counting on. Instead, I checked in at a Marriott off the highway, hung my dress, laid out the small navy suit I would wear to the rehearsal dinner, and only then did I pick up the phone. Britta answered on the second ring. "Where are you?" she asked, and I could hear her voice pulled tight the way a violin string sounds right before it snaps. "I just got in," I explained. "I am at the hotel. I will be at the church by 6. Mom said you should come here first." "I will come to the house tomorrow morning for pictures. Tonight is about you and Corbin. I do not want to fight." There was a long pause. Then she asked more quietly, "Are you actually going to be nice this weekend, Sutton?" I closed my eyes. There was a version of me that would have snapped back and asked when exactly I had been mean. There was another version that would have crumbled and apologized for things I had not done. Instead, I chose a third door. "I love you," I told her. "I am here for your wedding. I am not going to make this about anything else." She let out a breath. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, please just be nice to Mom. She has been really stressed." "I will do my best." We hung up, and I stared at the ceiling of the hotel room for a full minute. My best. That phrase had done so much heavy lifting in my life that it should have qualified for a labor union. The rehearsal at St. Mark's Lutheran began at 6:15. I pulled into the parking lot at 6:10 and sat in the car for a moment, watching my family through the tall front windows. My mother in a coral blouse, her hair set in curls she had rolled that morning. My father in a gray sport coat that had not fit him properly in 5 years. Britta in a white sundress, glowing, her hand in Corbin's, laughing at something the pastor had said. My Aunt Rowena and my Uncle Ford, in from Louisville. My grandmother, Nana Pearl, 82, sitting in a pew with her cane leaning against her knee. I got out of the car and walked up the front steps, and the first person to see me was my father. His eyes swept me from head to toe in about half a second, took in the fitted navy blazer, the tailored trousers, the low heels, the small leather bag over my shoulder. Everything I was wearing had cost more than the last 3 of his monthly car payments. He could not have known that specifically, but he saw something in my clothes that made his jaw tighten before I had crossed the threshold. "You are late," he grumbled instead of a hello. "I am 5 minutes early," I corrected without breaking stride. Britta turned, her whole face lighting up for a moment before she remembered the story she was supposed to be inside of. Then her expression settled into something practiced, half a smile, half a pout. "You made it," she observed, and I could hear my mother's coaching under every syllable. "I made it." I pulled her into a hug. She smelled like the same perfume she had worn since junior year, and for 1 second I remembered her as a little girl in pigtails asking me to help her tie her shoes. Then she stepped back and my mother swept in like weather. "Sutton," Marlene took both my hands, squeezed hard enough to bruise, and looked me up and down. "You look thin. Are you eating?" "I am eating," I confirmed. "That outfit is very," she paused, searching for a word that would land somewhere between a compliment and a wound, professional, for a rehearsal. I came straight from the airport. I let her hold my hands another 2 seconds and then withdrew mine gently. "The dress rehearsal is happening at the church, right? Not a fashion show." She narrowed her eyes at me, then laughed a laugh that had no warmth in it. Same old Sutton, always a comeback. The pastor called us to the front of the church and started walking the wedding party through the ceremony. I stood in my spot, held the fake bouquet they had given me, watched my sister practice her vows to a man I barely knew but who seemed decent enough. Corbin was 29, an assistant manager at a car dealership in Loveland, quiet in the way men are quiet when they know they are marrying into loud. He caught my eye at one point during the rehearsal and gave me a small nod that I returned. I liked him. I hoped he understood what he was walking into. Halfway through, my father stepped away from the group and pulled me into the vestibule at the back of the church. "We need to talk," he insisted. "After the rehearsal," I answered. "Now." I looked past him at the wedding party, at Britta laughing with her maid of honor, at the pastor pointing something out on a printed order of service. Then I followed him into the vestibule and closed the wooden door behind me. "You got my message," he began. "I got your message. And I am here." He crossed his arms over his chest and set his feet the way he had set them across every argument of my childhood. "I want to be clear about something, Sutton. This weekend is not about you. Not about your job in Seattle, not about your fancy apartment, not about whatever attitude you have decided to bring back home this year. This weekend is about your sister. And if you cannot handle that, if you cannot be a decent human being to your own mother for one weekend, then there are going to be consequences." "Such as?" I asked evenly. "Such as I am done funding your life." He said it slowly, enunciating each word as if he had rehearsed it. "You have coasted long enough on our money. Your mother and I have decided that whatever we are still sending, whatever safety net you think you have, is going away. And if you make one scene this weekend, I will personally call your bank on Monday morning and stop everything." I looked at him, really looked at him. My father, at 64, with his thinning hair and his belt notched a little tighter than last year, believed that he was holding a match over the roof of my house. He believed I would flinch. Every version of me that had ever stood in a room with him had flinched. He had built his entire relationship with me on the memory of those flinches. I did not flinch. "Okay," I answered quietly. He blinked. "Okay. Okay, Dad, whatever you think you need to do, I am here for Britta. That is why I came." Something in his face shifted, uncertain, because he had expected me to argue. Arguments he knew how to win. Silence was a country he had never learned to travel in. "Do not test me, Sutton," he warned again, softer this time, as if he was reminding himself as much as me. "I heard you the first time." I opened the vestibule door and walked back to my spot in the wedding party. Britta looked over at me, searching my face for whatever storm my father had just tried to start. I gave her a small, calm smile. She looked away first. The rehearsal ended at 7:15, and we all drove in a caravan to the country club for dinner. As I pulled out of the church parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror at my father getting into his old sedan, and I understood something I had never fully understood before. He had spent my entire adult life cert that his approval was the ceiling of my sky. He was about to find out how much sky I had built above him. The country club sat at the top of a long driveway lined with maple trees, a 2-story building with a wraparound porch and a dining room that could hold about 120 people. Britta had rented the smaller side room for the rehearsal dinner, and by the time I walked in, most of the guests were already seated, glasses of white wine in hand, small plates of stuffed mushrooms disappearing off the past trays. My assigned seat put me between my Aunt Rowena and my cousin Delaney, 24, my Uncle Ford's daughter, a nursing student at the University of Louisville. Delaney had always been my quiet ally at family gatherings, the one who noticed how many times my mother interrupted me and rolled her eyes about it later in the parking lot. She stood up when she saw me and hugged me like she meant it. "You look amazing," she whispered into my hair. "Like actually amazing. Where did you get that blazer?" "Seattle," I answered, sitting down beside her. "Aunt Marlene said you were struggling," she added, casually watching my face. I actually laughed, and picked up my water glass. "Did she now?" "She said you were between jobs, that your dad was still helping you with rent." I set the glass back down. "Delaney," I began, "let me ask you something. Do I look like I am between jobs?" She studied me. Studied the blazer, the small gold watch on my wrist, the manicure I had gotten in Seattle 2 days earlier, the confident way I sat in a chair full of family politics without hunching my shoulders. "No," she admitted. "You look like you are running something." "That is because I am," I confirmed, keeping my voice low. "Do me a favor. Do not say anything yet, just watch tonight. Watch tomorrow. Everything is going to make sense by the end of the reception." Her eyebrows went up. "Sutton, what is going on?" "Nothing yet," I answered. "I promise you will know when." Across the room, my father tapped a knife against his water glass, and the room quieted. He stood, holding a folded piece of paper, and looked out over the guests with the smile of a man who had waited his whole life for a moment where every eye was on him. He cleared his throat. "Family and friends," he began, "tonight is the night before one of the greatest moments of our lives as parents. Tomorrow, our beautiful daughter Britta becomes a wife." Applause. Britta blushed. Corbin took her hand. "Marlene and I have poured everything we have into our girls," my father continued, and I felt Delaney tense beside me. "We believe in family. We believe in sacrifice. We have not always had a lot, but we have always made sure our daughters had what they needed to succeed. And tonight, watching Britta step into this next chapter, I could not be prouder of the daughter she has become." He paused. I could see it coming before it landed. I had lived inside my father's speeches for 3 decades. There was always a hinge, a place where he pivoted from praising Britta to gently subtracting from me, so that the praise for her landed heavier by comparison. He did it at graduations. He did it at birthdays. He did it once at Thanksgiving in front of a boyfriend I had brought home for the first time, a man I never brought home again. "Britta has always known who she is," my father continued. "She has always put family first. She has always made her mother and me feel loved and respected. She never made us wait by the phone. She never forgot Mother's Day. She never chose a city thousands of miles away over the people who raised her." There it was, the pivot. Delaney reached under the table and put her hand on my knee. My mother, at the same table as my father, dabbed her eye with a napkin as if she were being deeply moved by his words. My grandmother, Nana Pearl, on the other hand, looked directly at me across 3 tables and shook her head once, slowly. Nana Pearl did not miss things. She never had. My father raised his glass. "To Britta, the daughter every parent hopes for." Every parent hopes for, not one of 2 daughters. The daughter, singular. In front of 200 witnesses at a rehearsal dinner, my father had used a toast to my sister to publicly rank his children. My Aunt Rowena, next to me, muttered something under her breath that sounded like Redmond, honestly. My Uncle Ford stared at his plate. Britta stood up, kissed my father on the cheek, and then, in a move that felt rehearsed, she turned toward me. "And thank you to my sister," she offered, her voice softer, "for finally showing up. I know it was not easy for you to be here." The room chuckled politely. It was a laugh line. Not easy for me to be here, as if I had been dragged, as if my presence was a favor she was gracious enough to accept. I lifted my glass, smiled the smile I had learned to smile in client meetings when someone said something condescending, and I needed 30 more seconds to decide whether to correct them or let them finish digging. "To Britta and Corbin," I responded warmly. "Wishing you a lifetime of love." I drank. I sat down. Delaney squeezed my knee harder. Dinner went on. Chicken piccata, roasted potatoes, green beans with almonds. The wine flowed. Speeches continued from the maid of honor, from Corbin's brother, from a college friend of Britta's who told a story about spring break that my mother visibly hated. Halfway through the meal, my mother rose from her chair and made her way around the tables to mine, laying her hand on my shoulder with a firmness meant to look affectionate. "Sutton, honey," she began, in the sweet voice she saved for public performances, "your father and I would love it if you could join us for a family photo after dessert. Just the 4 of us. Britta wants one." "Of course," I answered. She squeezed my shoulder. "And I hope you know, whatever your father said tonight, we both love you very much. It has been hard for us watching you struggle out there. We want to help." There it was, the setup. My mother had been telling every relative in that room for months that I was struggling, that I needed help, that I was not doing well. She had constructed a whole narrative about my life so that my father's public rebuke would land as concern rather than cruelty. She was laying groundwork for tomorrow, when they planned to corner me at the reception and force me into some public apology, some declaration of gratitude, some visible acknowledgement that the family had carried me and that Britta was the true success story. I looked up at her. "Mom," I offered gently, "we should talk after the wedding, not tonight, not tomorrow, but after. There are some things you should know." Her eyes flickered, suspicion, confusion. "What things?" "After the wedding," I repeated. Her fingers tightened on my shoulder for a moment, then released. "All right, dear," she agreed, uncertain, and drifted back to her seat. Delaney leaned close. "You are being weirdly calm," she whispered. "I am not calm," I admitted. "I am ready." The rest of the dinner blurred past. When it ended, guests filtered out to the front lawn to watch the last of the summer sunset. I found Nana Pearl on a bench near the porch, her hands folded over the top of her cane. "Sit," she instructed, patting the bench beside her. I sat. She looked at me for a long time, then she asked, "How is your work, Sutton? The real work, not the story your mother is telling." My throat tightened. Nana Pearl was the only person in the family I had never lied to. She had never asked me for details, and I had never offered them, but she had always known. She had sent me a card every year on my birthday with a $20 bill inside and a note that always said the same thing. "Your grandfather would have been proud of you. He always knew what was underneath." "The real work is good, Nana," I confessed quietly. "It is really good." "Where are you now?" "I run a division of a strategy firm in Seattle. I have 32 people who report to me. I bought a house in April." She nodded slowly, as if I were confirming something she had already worked out. "And your parents?" "They think I am floundering." "Because you let them." "Because I let them," I agreed. She reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were thin and cold, but her grip was strong. "You have carried their story about you long enough, Sutton. Tomorrow, or the day after, or whenever you decide, you can set it down. You do not owe your parents a version of yourself that fits inside their imagination. Do you hear me?" "I hear you, Nana." She patted my hand once firmly. "Good, now go get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day." I walked to my rental car under a sky that had turned deep violet, and as I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Your father is very hurt by your attitude tonight. Please come to the house early tomorrow to make things right." I did not answer. I drove back to the Marriott, hung my navy blazer in the closet, and stood at the window looking out at the dark Ohio night. My reflection stared back at me, older than I had ever felt in that town, and calm in a way I had not been calm since I was 17. Tomorrow the truth was walking down an aisle, whether my parents were ready or not. Britta's wedding day started at 6:15 in the morning with a text from my mother that read, in all capital letters, "Where are you?" I turned my phone over, showered, ate a small breakfast from the hotel buffet, and drove to the family house at 8:30 for photos, which was exactly when the photographer had scheduled the bridal party. Not a minute earlier, not a minute later. The house I grew up in sat on a corner lot, a small two-story with white siding and blue shutters, a maple tree in the front yard that my father had planted the year Britta was born. My mother had strung white ribbons on the porch railing, and someone, probably Aunt Rowena, had hung a wreath on the front door. My rental car was the only one in the driveway with out-of-state plates. The moment I opened the front door, chaos hit me in the face. Britta was upstairs shrieking at someone about the veil. My mother was in the kitchen on the phone with the florist, her voice climbing octaves. My father sat at the dining room table in his tuxedo pants and undershirt, staring at his phone with the specific stillness of a man being ignored by everyone in his own house. "Sutton," he looked up, "come here." "I need to get changed," I answered. "Britta is on a timeline." "Come here." I set my garment bag down on the couch and walked into the dining room. I did not sit. He set his phone face down. "I want to know something." "What is it, Dad?" "Your mother says you told her last night that there were things she should know." "What things?" I looked at him. In the light of the dining room, without his sport coat, without the audience of a rehearsal dinner, he looked older than I remembered. His shoulders sagged slightly. There was a coffee stain on the collar of his undershirt. He was still my father, and part of me, the part that would always be the little girl in the hallway holding the acceptance letter, wanted him to be different than he was. Wanted him to ask me how I was. Wanted him to see me. "After the wedding, Dad," I responded. "This is Britta's day." "Sutton," he stood up. "If you have something to say, you say it now, before you embarrass this family in front of 200 people. "I am not going to embarrass anyone," I promised. "I came here to celebrate Britta, that is all." "Then why did you tell your mother she needs to know things?" He stepped closer. "What things? Are you in trouble? Are you pregnant? Are you in debt? Did you lose your job?" I almost laughed. Almost. The list of catastrophes he had assembled in his head told me everything I needed to know about the daughter he believed I was. "I am fine, Dad." I picked up my garment bag. "I am going to go get ready. I love you." I said the last 3 words without thinking. They came out anyway, because 31 years of a daughter loving her father does not simply switch off because the father is unkind. He blinked at me, confused, as if I had spoken a language he had forgotten. Upstairs, Britta was standing in the middle of her old bedroom in a slip and heels, her hair half up, mascara streaked down one cheek. When she saw me, she burst into fresh tears. "The veil is wrong," she wept. "It is not the one I ordered. They sent the wrong one and now Mom says it does not matter, but it matters. Sutton, it matters. This is my wedding day." I set my bag down, walked over, took the veil out of her hand and looked at it. It was ivory. Not champagne, which was what she had ordered. Barely a shade off. 99 out of 100 guests would never notice. I noticed, though, because I had built my career on noticing what other people missed. "Sit down," I instructed her gently. She sat. I knelt in front of her, wiped her mascara off with the corner of a tissue, and looked her in the eye. "Britta," I explained, "the veil looks beautiful. The color is a hair different from what you ordered. Nobody in that church is going to be looking at your veil. They are going to be looking at your face. And your face is going to be so happy that a slightly different shade of ivory is going to look like it was always meant to be there." "Okay." She sniffled. "You are just saying that." "I am telling you the truth. If you want, I will call the shop on Monday and get you a refund for the difference. But right now, in this moment, on your wedding day, this veil is going to work. I promise." She nodded slowly, then quieter, "Thank you." "You are welcome." She looked at me for a long moment, as if she were seeing me for the first time in a long time. Then she asked, in a voice so small it did not sound like her, "Are we okay, Sutton? Really?" I paused. I could have said yes. I could have made her wedding day easier by lying one more time. I had spent 9 years making other people's days easier by lying. "We are going to be," I answered carefully. "There are things we should talk about, you and me, after all of this. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Real things, sister to sister." She nodded, uncertain, and then her maid of honor burst through the door with the shoes, and the moment ended. I got dressed in the hallway bathroom because Britta needed her room. My lavender dress fit me the way clothes fit when a good tailor has done her work, and I had paid a good tailor in Seattle to alter it to my exact shape 3 weeks earlier. When I came out, my mother was standing at the top of the stairs, dressed in her mother of the bride gown, a long dusty rose thing with beading at the neckline. She looked me up and down. Her face went through a small collapse and then reassembled itself. "That dress fits you very well," she observed, and I could tell it hurt her to say it. "Thank you, Mom. I did not know you had time for the alterations." "I made time." She stepped closer and touched a lock of my hair that had come loose from the low bun the stylist had built. "Sutton, whatever happens today, please remember that we are your family. Your only family. Whatever you think of us, we are the ones who will still be here when everything else is gone." I looked at her. My mother, at 59, still convinced that her love was a locked door and she held the only key. "I remember, Mom," I answered. "Believe me, I remember everything." She did not know how to take that. She patted my arm and went back downstairs. The ceremony was at 11 at St. Mark's. The reception at the country club at 1. Between those two events, my life and my parents' understanding of it were going to permanently diverge, and I already knew the exact moment where the diverging would happen. At the church, I walked Britta down the last hall to the vestibule where my father waited to escort her the rest of the way. She was luminous. Whatever else was true, my sister on her wedding day was a beautiful bride, and when I handed her off to our father at the top of the aisle, I felt a small crack open in my chest that surprised me. The ceremony was traditional. Vows, rings, a brief homily from the pastor about patience and forgiveness that I filed away for later use. When Corbin kissed Britta and the congregation stood and clapped, my mother wept, my father beamed, and Nana Pearl caught my eye from the second row and gave me a tiny nod of approval. We took photos on the church steps for 20 minutes. My father stood next to me for one of them, his hand on my back in a way that was performative, and I let him keep it there. The reception line at the country club began at 1:15. Guests streamed in, hugged Britta and Corbin, took their seats. My table was near the front, a family table with my parents, Nana Pearl, Aunt Rowena, Uncle Ford, and Delaney. The DJ played background music. Salads arrived. My father tapped his water glass. Here it comes, I thought. He stood up. Before we get to the dancing, he announced, I want to say a few more words. Because tomorrow is Sunday, and on Monday, our family enters a new chapter. Delaney kicked me under the table. My father looked around the room, playing the crowd. Then he looked at me, directly. For years, he began, my wife and I have supported both of our daughters through school, through jobs, through hard times. We have given without asking anything in return, because that is what family does. But every parent knows there comes a day when children have to stand on their own. And so today, on the happiest day of Britta's life, I want to publicly announce that Marlene and I are officially closing the college fund we have been sending Sutton for the last decade. Not because we do not love her, but because we believe in her. And because it is time for her to build a life without her parents' help. The room was silent. A ripple went through the guests, whispers, glances. Delaney's hand found mine under the table and gripped hard. My mother beamed proudly beside my father, as if he had just donated a wing to a hospital. My father lifted his glass in my direction. To Sutton, may this be the year you finally figure it out. I looked around the room. I saw the pity on my aunt's face. I saw the confusion on Corbin's brother's face. I saw Britta staring at my father with an expression I could not read. I saw Nana Pearl put a hand over her mouth, not in shock, but in barely contained fury. I stood up. I stood up slowly, deliberately, and I picked up my own water glass. Thank you, Dad, I began. That was a beautiful toast. May I say a few words in return? The room held its breath. My father, still standing, blinked at me uncertain. My mother's smile started to slip. Please, I offered, sit down, Dad. I will only take a minute. He sat, slowly, his face uncertain in a way I had never seen it before. I turned toward the room. Family and friends, I greeted them, and my voice, to my own surprise, was steady, warm, absolutely calm. My name is Sutton Marsh, and I would like to introduce myself to you, properly, for the first time. Delaney let out a breath. Nana Pearl leaned forward on her cane. Somewhere near the back of the room, a fork clinked softly against a plate. And I began. I graduated from college in May of 2022, I told the room. From a business program on the East Coast that a lot of you have probably heard of. I graduated at the top of my class. Number 1, valedictorian. I gave a speech on the same stage where my professors handed me my diploma, and my parents were not in the audience that day, because I did not tell them the date. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice settling in the pitcher on our table. My mother's hand rose slowly to her throat. My father sat very still, his water glass still in his fingers, his eyes fixed on me as if he had never seen my face before. I did not tell them the date, I continued, because for the previous 4 years I had been telling my parents that I was struggling, that I was barely making my grades, that I needed their support to keep going. I let them believe they were sending me a check every month that was keeping the lights on in my dorm room. That check, $600 a month, went into a savings account I opened my freshman year. I never spent it. Every dollar my parents thought they were feeding into my education is still in that account, plus interest. It came to about $42,000 by the time I graduated. It is still there, untouched, in case they ever want it back. A murmur ran through the crowd. Someone at a back table set their fork down with a soft clatter. I paid for my own school, I explained. I paid with scholarships. I paid with a research assistantship that covered tuition from my sophomore year on. I paid with 2 jobs that I worked through every semester, including summers. My parents did not pay for my degree. They just believed they did, and I let them believe it, because when I was 18 years old, I overheard my mother tell my father in our kitchen that she was afraid a big degree would make me think I was better than the rest of the family. I was standing in the hallway when she said it. I still remember the exact linoleum pattern under my feet. My mother made a small choked sound. Her face had gone the color of chalk. So I made a decision at 18, I went on, that I would go, and I would work, and I would climb, and I would let my parents keep their version of me as long as they needed it. Because I loved them. Because I did not want to break my mother's heart. Because I hoped, honestly, that one day they would be ready for the truth. I paused. I took a slow breath. I looked at Britta, who was staring at me with her mouth slightly open, her bouquet forgotten on the table in front of her. After I graduated, I continued, I took a job with a consulting firm based in Seattle. I moved out there in June of 2022. I have worked there for 3 years. This past January, I was promoted to lead the West Coast Strategy Division. I now manage 32 people. My base salary is more than my father and mother earn combined, and it is not close. In April of this year, I bought a house in the Queen Anne neighborhood of Seattle with cash, from savings I built during my first 2 years at the firm. I am not struggling. I have not been struggling for a very long time. I have never once, in 9 years, asked my parents for a single dollar. I have never received a single dollar from them that I actually needed. The silence in the room had a weight now. It pressed on the ceiling. Guests were leaning forward. My father had set his water glass down and was gripping the edge of the table with both hands. My father called me on Tuesday afternoon, I revealed. He left a voicemail telling me that if I did not come to this wedding and behave, he would freeze my accounts and stop sending my college money. I want to be clear, in front of everyone here, so that there is no confusion later. My parents have not sent me any college money for 9 years. There is no account they can freeze. There is no fund they can close. What my father announced a few minutes ago, publicly at his own daughter's wedding, was a threat he believed he was making toward a daughter he thought was dependent on him. He was wrong. He has been wrong for a long time. A woman at the third table put her napkin to her mouth. Someone else, I could not see who, whispered, "Oh my God." I did not come here to embarrass anyone, I promised. I did not want this to happen today. I asked my mother last night if we could talk after the wedding. I asked my father this morning to wait. I gave my parents every opportunity to keep this conversation private. My father chose to stand up in the middle of my sister's reception and use a public toast to humiliate me one more time. He has done that at every family event I can remember. I am 31 years old, and I am done letting him do it. I turned toward Britta. Britta, I offered more softly, I love you. You are my little sister. Nothing about what I have just said changes that. This is your day. I did not want to take one moment of it from you. But I could not let a lie stand in front of the people who love you, especially a lie designed to make me smaller so that you could look bigger. You do not need me to be smaller. You are wonderful exactly as you are. I hope you and Corbin have a beautiful marriage. Britta's eyes filled with tears. She did not look away from me. Corbin, beside her, reached over and took her hand. I turned back to the room. To Britta and Corbin once again, and to my grandmother Pearl, who has known the truth about me for a long time and has kept my secret because she trusted me to tell it when I was ready. To my cousin Delaney, who has always seen me clearly. And to my parents, who I still love, even now, even after everything, and who I hope, one day, will be able to love the daughter I actually am, and not the daughter they invented so they could feel comfortable. I raised my glass. To honesty, I toasted quietly. To family that tells the truth. To sisters who deserve real relationships. Cheers. I drank, I sat down. My hands were shaking, but only I could see them, hidden below the tablecloth. Delaney gripped my forearm so hard I would find bruises there in the morning. Nana Pearl had tears streaming down her cheeks and a small, fierce smile on her lips. For about 4 seconds the room did nothing. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Aunt Rowena, my father's own sister, stood up from her chair, walked across the room, wrapped her arms around my shoulders from behind and said, loud enough for the entire reception to hear, "I am so proud of you, Sutton. My God, I am so proud of you." The dam broke. Guests began to stand, not all of them. Some sat frozen. But my grandmother rose, slowly, using her cane, and lifted her own glass in my direction with a hand that shook. Uncle Ford stood, Delaney stood. Corbin stood, still holding Britta's hand. His brother stood. 2 of my cousins from Cleveland stood. A great uncle I barely remembered from Toledo stood. My father did not stand. My mother did not stand. My father's face had gone from red to gray to a color I did not have a word for. My mother's mouth was opening and closing without producing any sound. Britta looked at my father, then at my mother, then at me. She was still crying. She did not stand up either, but she did not look angry. She looked stunned in a way that felt like a door had opened in her that she had never known was there. The DJ, sensing that we needed something, anything, gently began to play a soft song, something slow and neutral. The waitstaff, professionals, started clearing the salad plates. Guests slowly sat back down. Conversation began again in low, shocked ripples across the room. My father stood up abruptly. He did not look at me. He walked out of the reception hall through the side door that led to the terrace. My mother scrambled up after him, her heels catching on the carpet, and followed him out. Britta got up from her seat at the head table and walked, in her wedding dress, straight over to me. She stopped in front of my chair. I stood up to meet her. For a long moment she did not speak. Then she asked, so quietly that only I could hear her, all those things Mom told me about you, that you thought you were too good for us, that you were struggling, that you did not care, were any of them true? No, I answered honestly, none of them. Why did you let her tell me those things? Because I did not know how to tell you the truth without blowing up our family. And because I was hoping, for a long time, that you would ask me yourself. She looked at me. Her makeup was ruined. Her veil was slightly crooked. She looked more beautiful in that moment than in any of the photos we had taken all morning. I am sorry, Sutton, she confessed. I believed her about everything. I am so sorry. I pulled her into a hug. Her arms went around me tightly. I felt her shoulders shake. I whispered into her hair, not today, not on your wedding day. We will talk, I promise. But right now you are going to go dance with your husband. She nodded against my shoulder. Then she pulled back, wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, gestured to the DJ, and said, in a voice that suddenly sounded like the little girl who used to curl up in my lap during thunderstorms, "Play something good, please. My sister needs to dance." The rest of the reception unfolded in a slow, strange, almost dreamlike sequence. Britta danced with Corbin. She danced with Uncle Ford since our father had not come back inside. She threw the bouquet and Delaney caught it, laughing so hard she nearly dropped it. The cake was cut. Toasts continued from Corbin's side of the family, safer toasts, funnier toasts, toasts that had nothing to do with me. Through all of it, I could see people watching me from the corners of their eyes. Some approached my table cautiously, offering awkward congratulations on my career. Aunt Rowena sat next to me for almost an hour, holding my hand under the table and telling me stories about my father as a teenager that I had never heard before. Stories about his own father, who had berated him at the dinner table for not being smart enough. Stories about the shape a man builds around a wound. That does not excuse him, Aunt Rowena warned me firmly. Nothing excuses what he did today, but you should know he learned to be cruel from a man who was crueler. I know, Aunt Rowena, I answered. That has always been part of the reason I could not stop loving him. She squeezed my hand. My father came back inside once, about 40 minutes after he had walked out. He did not sit down. He stood at the back of the room by the coat rack, arms crossed, watching the dancing. My mother was not with him. He did not look at me. He did not look at Britta either. He watched the dance floor the way a man watches a house burn from across the street, unwilling to move closer, unable to walk away. Eventually, he left again. I saw him through the window heading toward the parking lot. His car pulled out and did not come back. My mother returned about 20 minutes after that, red-eyed and mascara smudged, and she went straight to Britta at the head table without looking in my direction. They spoke quietly for a minute. Britta reached out and touched her shoulder, said something I could not hear. Then my mother crossed the room to my table. Delaney and Aunt Rowena stood up without a word and gave us space. My mother sat down in the chair Delaney had vacated. She did not look at me at first. She stared at the flowers in the centerpiece for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and rough. "Was it worth it?" she asked. "Was what worth it?" "Humiliating your father, in front of everyone." I turned in my chair to face her. "Mom," I offered gently, "I did not humiliate my father. I told the truth about myself. My father humiliated himself when he stood up and lied about closing a fund that did not exist. If the truth about my life is humiliating to him, that is a conversation he needs to have with himself, not with me." She closed her eyes. "He is going to leave me," she whispered. "What?" "Your father, he said in the parking lot he wants a divorce. He said I lied to him too. He said I never told him about the money we were sending you when we could not really afford it, he said. She stopped. She could not finish. I studied her face. My mother, at 59, with the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes and the light foundation she always dabbed on before leaving the house, looked, for the first time I could remember, small. "Mom," I inquired quietly, "did Dad really not know that you were the one sending me those checks?" She shook her head. "He thought we were sending them together. I handled the money." "He never looked. I told him you called and asked every month and he just—" She swallowed. "He believed me. He wanted to be the kind of father who supported his daughters, so he believed me." "And you never asked me if I needed it," I noted. "No, I never asked. Because I told myself I was doing something kind. Because I could tell your father a story where he was generous. Because I needed to believe that I was still important to your life." I sat with that for a long moment. "Mom," I chose my words carefully. "I love you, I do, but you told Britta for years that I looked down on you, that I did not care. That I was struggling. Every one of those stories hurt her more than it hurt me. She grew up believing her sister was ashamed of her. That was not fair to her. Do you understand?" My mother nodded slowly, her eyes filled. "I did not know how to be the mother of a daughter who was passing me," she confessed, her voice cracking. "I did not know what to do with a daughter who was going to be more than me. My mother taught me that daughters were companions, that we stayed near. That we grew into our mothers. And when you left, when you got that acceptance letter, I felt like I was losing something I did not know how to hold on to. So I made Britta the daughter who stayed. I made you the daughter who left, and I told her every story I needed to tell to keep her close." I did not answer right away. I looked out at the dance floor, at my sister spinning in her wedding dress in the arms of her new husband. Britta, who had been shaped in ways she did not know, by a mother who had been shaped in ways she did not know, by a grandmother we would never meet. "Mom," I told her softly, "I am not going to yell at you tonight. I am not going to make a scene. But I want you to understand something. I love you. I have always loved you, and I am done pretending. I am done being small so that you can feel tall. I am done letting you tell my sister lies about me. If you want any relationship with me from this day forward, it starts with you telling Britta the truth, in your own words, about what you did and why." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Not tonight," I added. "Not on her wedding day, but soon, and in front of me, so I know it is real." "Okay," she agreed, barely audible. We sat in silence for another minute. Then she got up, laid her hand on mine for a second, and walked back to Britta. Nana Pearl caught my eye from across the room and lifted her cane in a small salute. I saluted her back with my water glass. Delaney slid back into her chair. "Are you okay?" "I do not know," I admitted honestly. "Ask me tomorrow." The DJ transitioned into an old song from the 80s, one my grandfather had loved. Nana Pearl surprised everyone by pushing her walker aside and stepping out onto the dance floor with Uncle Ford, moving in slow, careful sways that made half the room stop what they were doing to watch. Corbin's family clapped for her. My grandmother, at 82, dancing at her granddaughter's wedding, was one of the most joyful things I had ever seen. I stood up and walked over to Britta. She was watching Nana Pearl with wet eyes. "Dance with me," I invited. She turned, she looked at me for a beat, and then she nodded. We joined Nana Pearl on the floor. The three of us, 3 generations of marsh women in a slow circle, laughing quietly, holding on. Delaney came out and joined us. Then Aunt Rowena. By the end of the song, there were 7 women dancing in a loose circle in the middle of the country club dance floor. And my father was still gone. And my mother was sitting at the head table watching. And the world was rearranging itself around a truth that had finally been spoken out loud. When the song ended, Britta leaned her forehead against mine and whispered, "I want to know you, Sutton, the real you, please." "Okay," I whispered back. The reception ended at 6. Guests filtered out slowly. Britta and Corbin left in a car covered in ribbons and shoe polish, headed for a hotel by the airport and a flight to Mexico in the morning. My mother left with Aunt Rowena, who had offered to drive her home and stay with her tonight. My father had not come back. I drove to the Marriott alone, kicked off my heels in the elevator, and did not cry until I was inside my hotel room with the door locked. Then I cried for a long time. Not from sadness exactly, or not only from sadness. From the strange, aching release of putting down something I had been carrying for 9 years. At 11 at night, my phone rang. It was Britta. "I know I am supposed to be on a honeymoon in the morning," she began without hello, "but before I get on that plane, will you have breakfast with me tomorrow? Just us. 6:30 at the Waffle House on Main. Corbin will meet me at the airport." "Yes," I answered, "I will be there." The Waffle House on Main Street in Lindenridge had not changed since I was 16. The same red vinyl booths, the same yellow signs. The same waitress, a woman named Lauren who had known me since I ordered chocolate chip waffles for the first time at age 6 and now knew Britta by name too. She raised an eyebrow when we walked in together, one of us in a hoodie and jeans, the other in a tracksuit with a wedding ring so knew it caught the light, and did not ask any questions. Just poured us both coffee and slid 2 menus onto the table. "How much sleep did you get?" I asked Britta. "Maybe 3 hours," she wrapped her hands around the mug. "You?" "About the same." We ordered waffles for her, eggs and bacon for me. When Lauren walked away, Britta looked down at her hands and let out a long breath. "I have been sitting up in bed since 4 in the morning going over everything you said yesterday," she confessed. "Every single sentence. Trying to remember all the things Mom told me about you over the years. Trying to figure out what was true. Do you know what I realized?" "What?" "I do not know you, Sutton. I do not know my own sister. I know a version of you that Mom described to me. I know the times you visited, and I was already annoyed with you before you walked in the door because Mom had spent a week telling me you were going to be difficult. I know the fights we had that I never actually understood the reasons for. But I do not know who you are. I do not know what your life looks like. I do not know your friends. I do not know your house. I do not know anything." Her eyes filled again. She wiped at them with a napkin. "So I want to start over," she added. "I want to know you, really, not through Mom, just you and me." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Okay, where do you want to start?" She laughed, a small, watery laugh. "I do not even know what to ask." "Ask anything." She thought for a second. "What did you actually study? In college, what was your major?" "Business analytics with a minor in economics." "And you graduated first in your class?" "Yes." "Did you give a speech?" "I did." "Do you have a copy of it?" "On my laptop. I can send it to you when you get back from your honeymoon." She nodded. "What is your house like?" "It is small, 2 bedrooms, blue front door. There is a lemon tree in the backyard that came with the property, and I have absolutely no idea what to do with the lemons. I have made lemonade twice and given the rest to my neighbors." She smiled, actually smiled. "You have neighbors who take your lemons." "An older couple next door. Their names are Hank and Josephine. Josephine bakes." "What is your job actually like?" I thought about how to explain it. "I help companies figure out where they are wasting money and where they should be spending it. I run a team that does that for clients up and down the West Coast. I fly a lot. I have 4 suitcases packed at various levels of ready at all times. I love it. I am tired most weeks, but I love it." She looked at me for a long time. "Mom told me last year," she offered slowly, "that you were sleeping on a friend's couch. That your last apartment fell through because you could not make rent. None of that was true." "I know that now," she swallowed. "I feel really stupid, Sutton." "You are not stupid. You are the youngest child of a woman who is extremely committed to making sure her older daughter looked bad. You believed the person who was supposed to be telling you the truth. That is not a failure of intelligence. That is a failure of trust that was placed in the wrong person." Lauren set our plates down. Britta stared at hers for a moment without picking up her fork. "Sutton, can I ask you something, and you have to promise you will answer honestly." "Okay." "Did you resent me?" I took a breath, held it, let it out. "Sometimes," I confessed. "Yes, I resented you sometimes. Not for anything you did exactly, for what I saw. For the way our parents lit up when you walked into a room and how they braced when I walked into one." Over breakfast, Sutton explained to Britta that her past resentment stemmed from their parents' blatant favoritism, not from Britta herself. She emphasized she had never stopped loving her sister. Britta realized their mother had manipulated her by framing Sutton as merely jealous. "It was almost always about her," Sutton agreed. Britta asked about their parents' impending divorce over their mother's hidden money. She refused to cut them off but agreed to Sutton's one request. Sutton needed Britta to tell their mother, in person, that she knew their mother had lied about her. This would ensure their new sisterhood was free from their mother's manipulation. They agreed to do it after Britta returned from Mexico. After Britta left, Sutton visited her grandmother, Nana Pearl. Nana gave her a small wooden box containing her grandmother's mother's emerald ring. Her grandfather had left instructions for Sutton to receive it, having always recognized her resilience. Nana urged Sutton to never let anyone take away what she had built. Back in Seattle, Sutton finally answered her father's persistent calls. He admitted he knew nothing about their mother's financial deception. He confessed his struggle with having a daughter who was smarter and more successful than him, realizing he had mirrored his own father's insecurities. He offered a sincere apology. Sutton told him she needed time to figure out their relationship outside of her old family role. He expressed deep pride in her achievements, which she quietly accepted. Weeks passed peacefully. Britta texted from Mexico, and they began bonding over shared interests. 3 weeks later, they held a video call with their mother. Britta confronted her about the years of lies. Their mother tearfully admitted she had painted Sutton as a villain to keep Britta close, intimidated by Sutton's independence. She promised to stop and mentioned she was attending counseling. Their father briefly appeared to confirm he was in therapy as well. 4 months later, Sutton visited Britta in Cincinnati. Britta had taken a new job, which their mother initially disliked but was now accepting thanks to her counseling progress. The sisters then visited their parents. Their mother respectfully asked for permission before hugging Sutton. Their father quietly asked if Sutton would join them for Christmas dinner in Seattle. She agreed. Outside, the sisters watched the autumn leaves. Britta asked how Sutton was truly doing. Sutton admitted she was tired, but felt incredibly light. She no longer had to carry the exhausting burden of hiding her true life from her family. That makes sense. But I am also happy, Britta. In a way I do not think I was before. I am doing work I love. I am building things. I have a sister who actually knows me now. She smiled. You do have that. That night, back at her condo, I sat on her guest bed unpacking my duffel and found, at the bottom, an envelope I had almost forgotten I had brought. It was a check for Britta. My wedding gift, which I had never given her because the day had gone the way it had gone, and it had not felt right to hand her a check in the middle of everything. $10,000. I had wanted to give her a real amount. I could afford it. I had made twice that in a client bonus a month before her wedding. I walked out to the living room. Corbin was watching a football game. Britta was on the couch with her legs tucked under her. I have something for you. I handed her the envelope. She opened it, she looked at the check, she looked at me. Sutton. For your wedding, and your new life, and because I love you. She started to cry. Corbin muted the game. I cannot take this. You can, I want you to, put it toward whatever you and Corbin want. A down payment on a house someday. A trip, anything, it is yours. She got up from the couch and hugged me hard. When she pulled back, she wiped her cheek and looked at me with a new expression, one I had not seen on her face before. Something like awe. You built a life where you can just do this, she noted. I built a life where I can just do this. Corbin cleared his throat. Sutton, if we ever have kids, and if any of them are girls, I want them to have an aunt like you. I laughed and cried at the same time and told him that if they had a girl, I would fly out for the birth and stay a whole week. He shook my hand across the couch. We watched the rest of the football game together. I fell asleep on the guest bed still in my clothes. Sunday I flew home. Monday I was back at work. My phone chimed on Tuesday afternoon with a message from Britta. Real question. What is a mortgage? Corbin and I are looking at houses. I typed back a 5-paragraph explanation. She sent a screenshot of my message to Corbin with the caption, "My sister just made a mortgage make sense to me. Someone check on my previous life." That was the beginning of the version of us that would last. The story could have ended there, at a maple tree in a front yard in a small Ohio town on an October afternoon. But real life does not end at scenes. Real life keeps going. And there are a few more things I want you to know before I close this out, because they matter. My father and mother came to Seattle for Christmas 2025. They stayed at a Holiday Inn about 6 blocks from my house. On Christmas Eve, I had them over for dinner at my place. It was the first time either of my parents had ever been inside my home. My mother walked around the living room, touching the corners of the furniture, looking at the framed photos on the wall, asking about the artwork. My father stood in the kitchen while I cooked and asked me questions about my job that he had never asked before. Real questions, about how strategy consulting worked, about what I actually did in a day. I answered them the way I would have answered them at 18 if he had ever asked. Halfway through dinner, my mother set her fork down and told me the roast was the best she had ever had. My father agreed, and then he said something I will remember for the rest of my life. "I am sorry, Sutton," he offered simply, in the middle of a Christmas Eve dinner in the kitchen of a house I had built with money I had earned. "For all of it, for what I did at Britta's wedding, for the years before that, for not knowing you, I am so sorry." I looked at him across the table. My mother had her hand over her mouth. My father was crying. He had never cried in front of me before. "I know, Dad," I answered gently. "Thank you." That was Christmas. In January of the new year, my grandmother, Pearl, passed peacefully in her sleep at 83. I flew back for the funeral. I gave the eulogy. Britta stood next to me while I gave it, and Aunt Rowena held my hand in the front pew, and my parents sat behind us and cried like two people who understood that they had almost missed everything that mattered. I still wear the emerald ring on my right hand. I look at it every morning when I put my watch on. It reminds me that my grandfather saw me before I could see myself, and that there was a woman before him, my great-grandmother, running a farm through the Depression, who probably knew what it felt like to be underestimated by the people who should have known her best. My relationship with my mother is still the hardest one. My father and I have found a rhythm. He calls me on Sunday afternoons. We talk for about 20 minutes. Real conversations. He is reading books now. He asked me for a list of business books last month, and I sent him 10. He is halfway through the third one. My mother and I are slower. We are polite. We are trying. She apologized once more, in person, in Seattle, alone with me at a coffee shop on the second day of that Christmas visit, and she cried, and I told her that I do not know when I will fully trust her again, but that I do not want to spend the rest of my life not speaking to my own mother. She said she understood. She said she would keep showing up. So far, she has. Britta and Corbin bought a house in June, a small 3-bedroom on a corner lot with a maple in the front yard. I flew out for the walkthrough. Britta cried when she signed the papers. I paid off the closing costs as a housewarming gift over their protest, and we ate pizza on the empty living room floor that night while Corbin's brother helped Britta paint the front door blue. Britta wanted it to match mine. I did not know she had noticed. She had. The consulting firm made me a partner in the fall of 2025. My name is on the door now. There are people who work under me who came up to me at the announcement party and asked if I would mentor them, and I said yes to all of them. Priya is my chief of staff. Delaney, my cousin, graduated from her nursing program and moved to Seattle in August. She lives 15 minutes from my house. We have Sunday breakfast together most weeks. She reminds me all the time that she called it. That she knew, at that rehearsal dinner in Ohio, that I was about to blow the roof off my parents' story about me. I remind her that she was the first family member to ever really see me. She rolls her eyes and steals the last piece of my bacon. There are things I want you to take away from this. If you are still with me, if you have made it this far, please hear me out. Here is what I have learned, in case it helps you the way it took me 31 years to learn it. Your parents do not own your future. They may have raised you. They may have fed you. They may have paid for things or believed they paid for things. None of that gives them the right to threaten your independence with money you did or did not receive. If your parents ever, at any age, use money to control your choices, that is not love. That is leverage, and you get to say no to leverage without being an ungrateful child. You get to say no even if it costs you every dollar you ever thought was yours, because the dollars are replaceable. Your one wild life is not. If you are being made small in your family, if there is a story about you that keeps getting repeated, and it does not match the person you know yourself to be, you do not have to keep performing that story. You do not owe anyone a version of yourself that fits inside their imagination. You are allowed to grow past what your parents can understand. You are allowed to be quiet about your growth if you need to be, until you are ready. You are allowed to be loud about it when the time comes. Both are valid. Both are yours to choose. If you are a sibling being told stories about your brother or sister, ask yourself who benefits from those stories. Ask yourself if you have ever actually asked the sibling directly, without your parent in the room. Ask yourself what your relationship with your sibling might look like if you took the parent out of the middle. Sometimes there is nothing left. Sometimes there is a whole other person waiting for you, someone who has been waiting for years for you to see them without the filter someone else installed. If you are the sibling being talked about, if you are the Sutton in your family, if there is a story running about you that you have quietly known was wrong for a long time, you are allowed to tell your side. You are allowed to tell it kindly. You are allowed to tell it publicly if that is what it takes. You are not obligated to keep protecting people whose comfort depends on your silence. Your voice is not a weapon. Your truth is not a betrayal. The truth being spoken feels like a betrayal only to the people who benefited from the lie. And if you are a parent watching this, and any of it lands close to home, please, please, do not wait until your child has to stand up at a wedding or a funeral or a Christmas dinner to tell you who they really are. Ask them. Sit down and ask them. Believe what they tell you. Do not compare them to their siblings. Do not use money to make them smaller. Do not turn one child into the family disappointment so that another child feels like the family success. Both of your children are watching. Both of them will remember. The daughter you talk over will not stay small forever. And when she stands up, you will not get to choose the room she stands up in. I am Sutton Marsh. I am 31 years old. I run a strategy division in Seattle. I have a house with a blue front door and a lemon tree in the yard. I have a sister who knows me now. I have parents who are trying. I have a grandmother buried under a magnolia in Ohio, whose ring is on my right hand. I have a cousin who lives 15 minutes away and steals my bacon. I have a life that is mine. Nobody threatens my future anymore. Not because I am unthreatenable, because I finally understand that my future is not something anyone else was ever holding. If this story reached you, if any of it felt like it was pulled from somewhere in your own family, I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment and tell me what you are carrying, what you have put down, what you are still trying to say out loud. If this story meant something to you, please give it a like and subscribe so more stories like this can find the people who need them. And share it with the person in your life who needs to be reminded that they are not the story their family has been telling about them. They are the story they get to tell themselves. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. Take care of yourselves out there. Be kind to your siblings. And do not, under any